Philip. So I'm going to be joined in a while by Edwina Dunford from Fingal County Council and Joan Tarmey of Clare County Council, and we're actually going to do a bit of Christmas carols at the end as well, if the girls agree. I have the very easy job of producing the materials. They have the very, very difficult but most important job of dealing with the public. And the Stop Food Waste programme, which was set up in 2009, was quite preemptive, really, from the EPA's perspective. You know, there's a huge amount of talk about food waste now. It's a very pertinent topic. It's very, very much in the press. But at the time when it started, it wasn't that way. So it was very progressive, and I think great credit should go to them for that. The original idea behind the project was that it had two core goals: to prevent food waste and to promote home composting. And you kind of look at them and say, well, home composting is obviously at home. It's a lot of people do with regard to gardening waste, but food composting is a very, very great. It's a good way of managing your food waste, providing it's done properly. The interesting aspect of it is that people who compost or formerly have composted, and there are a lot of former composters out there, but these people produce less food waste. And the question is always, why do they do it? And it's one of the most important aspects in what we do. It's awareness. And no matter if you're a business, if you're a retailer, if you're a householder, if you don't have awareness of an issue, if you don't have information about the issue, it's very hard to actually address that issue. At the time as well, obviously 2009 was just after the economic kaboom in 2008, and there was a kind of a sea change at the time. A lot of people were beginning to produce their own food. There was a lot more interest in gardening, and obviously with an interest in gardening, there was an interest in composting. Food waste prevention at the time wasn't really on people's radars as it is today. So it was a very important in for us to get in with communities and householders to talk about composting, and that's often what we did. We started with the composting and then got to the food waste, which is obviously, when it boils down to it, it's part of what our programme is all about: stop food waste. So in the intervening years, we've been very fortunate in that we really work closely and in conjunction with local authorities. That's our core function. We produce the materials to support local authorities in what they do. It's a consistent message, and we've learned most of our lessons really from their work. What we found on researching it, on discussing it with stakeholders like the EPA and other community groups, is that there's this food life cycle that obviously people experience. You plan and shop, but hopefully you plan. Most people don't. You shop, you store your food at home, you cook at home, you serve it and you reuse it, and then you hopefully compost it, but invariably throw it out. And a lot of this is habitual. You know, we do the same things week in, week out. As Suzanne said, we're busy. We don't think about these food-related issues because they're endemic. They're what we do day to day. And to actually change that is an exceptionally difficult process, because you have to stand back and look at it and say, okay, what I'm doing is wrong. People don't like to be told that they're doing something wrong, so they really have to figure it out themselves. So we've learned an awful lot since we started. We've generated a lot of tools, and the Stop Food Waste Challenge, which the two ladies are going to speak about in a while, was an evolutionary step of all the lessons that we learned along the way. A very important part of the programme, as I said at the start, was was composting. So what we did is we worked in conjunction with local authorities running master composter programmes. These are sort of 5 or 6 meeting programs which dealt with all aspects of composting. Now, composting is it's a process. I think calling a composting bin is an unfair thing to do, because a bin is where you throw something away. Composting takes time, and I mentioned earlier on that there's former composters out there, because oftentimes you'll do it doesn't work, you get brassed off, there might be rats, it becomes a smelly mess, and people stop. And that's very unfortunate, because if it's done properly, it's a great way of managing waste, and obviously you can use your compost subsequently. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to show people hands-on how to do it, because it is a process, and you have to realize that you have to actually put a bit of work into it. And there's composting systems for everybody out there, regardless if you live in a small apartment or a big estate house like Philip. Sorry, Philip. We started in Roscommon. The first one was very, very interesting. It was obviously a learning curve, and since then we've spread our wings throughout the country. This is just a screenshot. We've changed the way we do things. We now, instead of just having one site, we try and start with one site and then get various community groups to build their own sites locally. So it's all this learning by doing. At the start, we did a small little bit on food waste. There was maybe half the first evening of 5 evenings. And there seemed to be a great appetite, and obviously our core function is to promote food waste prevention. But there was a real appetite from the people that we were dealing with about the issues of food waste. And it's a very personal thing. Putting food on a table is very personal. Throwing food out is a desperate thing. So anybody, and a lot of people here have worked with food waste, it's an awful thing to throw out food waste. And I don't think there's anybody who isn't impacted by it. So in response to that, we kind of changed the way we ran the program, and we now have probably 40% on food waste in the Master Composter program, whereas previously we only had one evening. So this was a very important driver in the evolution of the Stop Food Waste Challenge. In addition, there was a great social and community aspect, and a lot of the times when the program's finished, people were saying, is there anything else we can do? Is there stuff? So these were all sort of fermenting in the background. Then in 2012, I think, we had a meeting with the Local Authority Prevention Network, and the local authority people said, look, brown bins are coming. We're going to be promoting brown bins. Wouldn't it be great if we could do a bit of food waste prevention on it, so that we can use this newfound awareness that people are now going to have because they're putting all their food waste in one spot, but we want to promote it with a prevention message as well so people can save money. So we wanted to do something about the bin. In addition, there had been the Feeding the 5,000, so after discussions with Mindy O'Brien, we kind of said, well, will we continue this 5K theme? So we said, okay, how about knocking 5 kilograms off a month's food waste? This was the idea at the start. Unfortunately, different people produce different amounts of food waste, so that target was a little bit tricky to communicate to people. And then with the Waste Watchers program, we realized that we needed a structure, because obviously if you were doing a TV program, you need a structure. So all of these experiences, all of these requirements led us into the realization that we had loads of information, but we had no structure. We were giving out loads of information to people in a kind of a relatively structured way, but for people to understand and to change themselves, they need a journey. And I know that might sound a little sort of new age happy, but it is true. People need this sort of awareness raising and figuring things out in their own way, because people don't like to be told what to do. They need to figure it out for themselves. And I think that... Next slide. Right. This is very busy. There's a lot in this, but this is basically the structure that we came along. I mentioned earlier on that obviously planning, shopping, storage and cooking are the key things that we do with regard to food and managing it in our households. These are the core things that we need people to address and to change. But the first one is awareness and knowing about their food waste. It is quite informative, if any of you haven't done it, if you can just put your food waste aside for a few days or for a week and just note the reasons beside it why. As part of the program that we did in Killorglin, we all did it, and I was kind of horrified that we were one of the worst offenders. And it wasn't that we were wasting food because it was going off or because we weren't managing it well. We were actually producing too much, keeping leftovers and leaving it in the back of our fridge, and then realizing a few days later that we hadn't used it and thrown it out. So it was only through actually measuring it, and I'd be a bit of a sort of I'm not easy to deal with when it comes to food at home. It was very informative to realize that we had something that we hadn't addressed ourselves. So this is kind of the background to what ultimately became the Stop Food Waste Challenge. So this is just a screen grab of the booklet. We came up with a structured approach. We usually deal with quite small groups. The idea is that we sort of introduce it with, what's it all about? We're obviously throwing out food waste. Why bother? It's costing us money. What can we do about it? And that's the key part. And that's what the program is all about. It's about how people can work towards reducing their own food waste, because we all waste food for different reasons. So what works for me may not work for for other people. We work in small groups. It's kind of intensive in terms of personnel and time. There's 4 meetings, usually in around an hour, so they're quite short. We didn't want to keep people for too long. And The structure of the meetings I'll come back to, but basically the first one is just understanding and knowing your food waste, then there's planning and shopping, then there's storing, serving and reuse, and then there's a final assessment. And again, it's bringing people through the different steps and asking them to consider it themselves. So each meeting has an introduction. It's very much about discussion and about having a bit of fun. And in fairness, I think that's what people do get out of it. There's usually presentations. We put in this checklist as well because we found that obviously with a lot of programs we're asking people to change. We give people information and expect them to do it, and that's kind of unfair because people can have the information, they're very busy, but they need motivators to change. So by just a small little checklist, getting people to tick it, we've found that people are a little bit more inclined to think about it themselves because they've made that commitment. And finally, we usually have a video at the end because we also realize that different people learn by different methods, and videos are very, very useful, short, sweet way of communicating a message. So there's a bunch of local authorities who have been involved in trialling this. Mindy in Voice is also, it's broken her heart trying to do it as well. It's not easy, and I think local authorities who've been involved in the development, from Galway County Council, Roscommon County Council, Mindy in Voice and Pauline as well, deserve an awful lot of credit because these are the people who work with communities, and that's what we're trying to do. We're working with communities because it's very hard to get a message out to the masses if you don't communicate locally. And I think that's we're very fortunate in having great local authorities trialling it at the moment. The idea is that we'll have feedback later next year, and that the facilitators pack, which we send out to any community that wants to do it, they'll be able to do it themselves. Whether that works out or not, I'm not sure, because there is quite a bit of work that goes into preparing it. But that's the idea. We're very open to sort of suggestions on it. There may be additional training needed locally, but we can address that. So I'm going to hand over to my esteemed colleagues who are on the battlefront, and they're going to tell you about their experiences. So thanks very much.
You're probably well and truly exhausted at this stage with all the facts and figures that have been thrown at you. I have 5 slides, so it's going to be nice and short. I think I left Claire around 5:30 this morning, so I'm exhausted. But it's been fascinating actually listening to everybody this morning, and I suppose we're part of the Local Authority Prevention Network, and we're used of liaising very closely with each other. And it's been great to see, all of from the production right through to retail this morning, and all of the suppliers and chains that are here this morning. And it's fascinating to hear what is going on. In some ways, I felt like I was, in a parallel universe. There's lots of really good stuff going on, and great videos on what's happening. And I'm kind of thinking back to the summer when we were doing some waste auditing, and in 25-degree heat, might I add. So not the most glamorous of work, but there is so much food waste coming at us. At a local level, we see this, and it's absolutely astonishing. It really is astonishing. But I suppose, part of you can be very cynical, and then you can swing to, you have to have some hope as well. And I think that all the different partners that are here today have, you're all kind of playing your part, and there's talk about collaboration and innovation. I think that's fantastic to hear. I think there's a long way to go from, when we're talking from the consumer side. And ultimately, we can blame, different people, but, we all have a responsibility in it, so we all have to play our part. So I'll just get on to, I suppose, talking about the Stop Food Waste Challenge that we did in Clare. And Karen Foley, one of my colleagues, is here as well from the Environment section. She assisted me in this. So this is our group. I suppose the way it came about is we put out a call for people who were interested in stopping, in cutting down on their food waste. And we actually, got quite a number of responses. I got some contact from one of the lady in the centre in the brown jacket, and she was part of the Tuamgraney Development Association in East Clare. And she's very interested in doing something on food waste. And she's very much involved in the whole Tidy Towns movement, and involved in the competition, and interested in increasing their markings and that as well. So I was saying to her, well, we're definitely willing to support you. Can you kind of get a group together that would be interested in doing this? And not only did she get her own group together, but there was 5 different organisations that she got together, a neighbouring Tidy Towns group, 2 other housing estates, and somebody else from slightly different part of the county. She was an allergen baker who has since travelled around to various stores promoting the message. So it's really getting out there. So, you know, when you ask groups to give up time, you kind of think to yourself, wow, you know, I was talking to Colum, I suppose, before it started. I was saying, is 4 workshops quite a lot, quite a big commitment for people? And I think it is, because, you know, even somebody asking me, you know, to go to the local school for, you know, 2 or 3 sessions on something, you know, especially if you're working full time, and even if you're not, it's a big commitment to ask people to come out on October, November evenings, you know, when it's dark and dreary. But people, you know, all of these people came out, and, you know, they were absolutely fantastic. So they really are to be applauded. So this was, I suppose, at the end of the challenge, it went on for over 8 weeks, but there was 4 workshops. And we weighed the material at workshop 2 and at workshop 4. And we actually got, this is astounding, because when I put the figures together myself, I kind of thought to myself, that can't be right. So I went back and checked over the figures, and we asked them to bring their waste in. You know, we didn't ask them just to weigh it at home, which some of them did anyway, but we actually weighed it ourselves when they brought it in. So over the course of between workshop 2 and workshop 4, we achieved a 78.5% reduction, which is astounding, really. It's almost too good to be true. And I was kind of saying to them, well, where's the rest of the food waste? So, but it, you know, it really, really worked. So it represented a reduction of 6.79 kilograms for every household that was represented. I suppose in the households, I was asking them as well, you don't really have control over the numbers in the households when you put the call out. But the majority of them had 2 people in the households. There was one particular household that had 5. And that was very instructive as well. I think it would be, you know, obviously if you can get families involved, that's fantastic. But in the course of the discussion, what we found was that some of the 2-person households were actually still cooking for 6. It's kind of hard to believe, but their families had grown up, they'd gone away, but they were still cooking for 6. And in fact, one of the householders was telling me that sometimes they might have callers dropping in, and you know, they might be eating their tea or whatever, and said, well, she'll have to put on some food, you know, you have to put on a bit extra for them. This is somebody who's dropping in who may or may not drop in. So it's just a crazy scenario what people are used to doing. So thankfully all those things have changed. I suppose some of the biggest findings that in the course of when we were doing the bringing in the food for the workshop 2 and workshop 4, we asked them to separate it out into avoidable food waste and unavoidable food waste. So that was interesting in itself, and again, even a learning process for people. But some of the biggest findings that came up were that people were buying and cooking too much. They were cooking, you know, way too many potatoes, an extra potato for the pot, fruit, veg, meat. You know, there was packs of ham and stuff that was like not even opened. You know, all of that stuff coming out. A lot of them didn't meal plan, and we gave out a couple of meal plans in the course of it, and they found them very, very useful indeed, and they've started working on that. And Shan from Shan's meal plan, it's a really innovative idea. You know, check that out. You can basically pull your various recipes into your 5-day plan and just click a button. It generates your shopping list for you. And people love innovation and different ideas like that. You know, the shopping list is the single biggest thing that people can do to help, but it's very hard selling the shopping list. But if you're selling something new and something different that can be sent to your phone, for example, it's quite a different story. So I think we just have to be creative with how we present things. Another thing that came up as well was throwing cream and milk down the sink. People didn't really think about that as food waste at all. And we probably have the best fed pets in the country, because people were, you know, maybe that extra bit of food, oh, sure, it's going to the dog, oh, it's going to the birds. Well, the birds really don't thrive on mouldy bread. It's a really bad idea to give them that. And equally, like, our dogs are probably obese, and, you know, they need certain dietary requirements. So it's just all about those things. There was one very interesting thing that there was a lady in the centre of the previous photo. She is a French lady, and she teaches in one of the local secondary schools. And she was saying, she was sharing her ideas on that basically they always use serving bowls for their meals and they put the food in the centre of the, she was saying that's just the way they do things in France. So that was like, there was a lot of cross-learning by the other people there as well, which was great. So, I think from this morning, some of the things that you'd said, just in case, people we have this fixation with, running out of food, or if we're putting on an event, God help us if we run out of food. Or if 10 people show up that didn't say they were coming and they expect to get food. It's just outrageous. So we just have to change that. So I think, from a grassroots level, we see it. We're kind of knee-deep in food waste when we're doing our audits and whatnot. It's really, it's so evident. And I think that Origin Green, one of the interesting things as well is that we now have businesses coming to us who are, obviously they've kind of been involved in some of the projects that we've been working on, but they're also now going for Origin Green. And they want to get their paperwork in order. So they're coming to the local authorities saying, oh, can we have this and can we have that? And, aren't we doing this right and whatever. So they're coming back to check to us. So it's great to see that collaboration and that kind of partnership. So if you've got all these tentacles and, you've got the Green Business Programme, you've got the Local Authority Prevention Network, you've got all these different things that are going on, and all of those coming together are really going to make a difference. So just two more slides. These are some quotes from the participants on the Stop Food Waste. Came as quite a shock, how much they were wasting, really like overbuying, throwing it out, why buy it in the first place? And even somebody commenting on the fact that, no matter how little waste you think you have, if you ask somebody, do you waste much food? The automatic reaction is, I don't waste anything at all. But if you go and look in their food bin, it's quite a different story. So another lady talking about their freezer, and not only was she happy enough to clear out her freezer and check out what was in there, she actually went to her mother's one as well. So it's all about spreading the word. And the final one there is that what they're going to do now, or what they're in the process of doing, is designing a flyer, a Stop Food Waste flyer, from all the learnings that they've found during their workshops, and they're distributing that to 150 households. And if we can keep doing this, I suppose, at a local level, then the message is definitely getting out there. So this was just some of the other important bit of making sure that the message gets out there is you can't just keep this learning to yourself, you have to spread it. And we got a lot of local coverage. We issued a media release, we did, some, and this was the community, taking this on board as well, that the group that participated, they were on the radio talking about their experiences, and it got into loads of different, local, kind of the biggest, I suppose, press that we have in Clare is the Clare Champions. It's fairly renowned, read by nearly every single person in the county, and the Clare People as well, and the Clare Herald. So you have all of these different coverages that took place, and they're going to continue to spread this further by doing the work that they're doing at a local level as well. So that's it. So thank you very much.